Alright guys, so today we're going to be talking about literal equations and how to solve literal equations. So our objective today that you should write at the top of your notes says, I will be able to apply the rules for solving equations to literal equations. So we've already gone through that C level of solving 1 and 2 steps. We've already done the B level, which is solving multi-step equations. So now we're putting what we know into solving literal equations. So your first question is probably, why literal equations, what are literal equations, etc. So sometimes you might have a formula and you need to solve for another variable other than the standard one, or the one that you usually solve for. So for example, we have the perimeter of a square. Normally we're given the side length and then we have to plug that in to get our perimeter. Sometimes, though, you might get your perimeter and have to solve for your sides. So you could plug that in for the perimeter and figure out the side length, or you can use what you know about solving equations to rewrite that formula so that you have S equals something. But first, as a review of solving equations, we have a nice two-step equation. I always want to draw my line right down the middle. First step would be to get rid of that 4, so undo any addition and subtraction. I'm left with 2x equals 6. Next, I can get rid of multiplication or division, so I'm going to divide by 2. So I should end up with x equals 3. And if I wanted to, I could plug that back in just to make sure I got it correct. So what about if we have an equation like this? 2x plus 4 equals y. So instead of 10, you'll notice that we now have y. Can we still solve for x? Yes, we're still going to go through the same exact process, although we won't be able to simplify as much. So for example, still going to draw my line down the middle. First thing I always want to undo if I'm solving for x is undo any addition or subtraction. Then I can undo multiplication or division. So I'm first going to subtract 4 on both sides. Can I subtract 4 from y right now? No. I mean, I can, but I can't simplify it, so I'm going to leave that side as y minus 4. Now, I see I have a 2 on this side that I need to get rid of, so I'm going to divide both sides by 2. And I'm going to write my answer over here. So I'm left with x equals y minus 4 over 2. Now, I can actually simplify that a little bit further. At this point, since this is new, I'm not going to go through how to do that, but you might be able to recognize how to do that right now, and you can do it, but if you leave your answer like this, I'm totally okay with that. So let's look at another one. We want to solve for the letter D this time. So notice how I have 3 variables in this statement, but it says I'm solving for D, so I first need to find D. There it is. And then I can go through and use my inverse operations to solve for that. So I'm going to draw my line down the middle. First thing I need to undo is any multiplication or division. I see I'm dividing, so I'm going to multiply by 2. So I'm left with 2q equals c plus d. Now I still don't have my d completely isolated, so I'm going to subtract c on both sides, since I was adding that before. So I'm left with 2q minus c is equal to d. I can't simplify that any further, so I can just leave my equation like that. Easy enough, right? So now, what if we have multiple of the same variable? In this case, we have ax minus bx equals c for x. Remember when we were distributing? If we had an equation that looked, or actually an expression, sorry, that looked like this, how would that simplify? Well, I would distribute my x to both terms, so I'd be left with ax minus bx. Oh, hey, look. That is what I have right there. So actually, I can factor that equation so that I'd be able to solve for x. So let's actually put that to use in these problems here. So go ahead and write down that first one, mx plus nx equals p. I know you've probably been taking notes this whole time, but just now telling you to write that one down. So if I'm trying to solve for x, which is what it says up here, solve the equation for x, first I see I have two x's, so I need to factor my x's out. So x times what? Well, I would put m plus n, right? If I multiply that out, it would simplify to the top, equals p. Now, if I want x by itself, I need to divide by m plus n, that whole term. Divide by m plus n. So now I'm just left with x on that side. That's equal to p over m plus n, because these guys canceled. Lovely. So let's try it one more time here. So again, I see that I have two x's in there, so I'm going to need to factor it out. So if I factor out an x, I'd be left with a minus, well, minus what? I don't have a number that I'm multiplying times x. But remember, if you're dividing a number by itself, what are you left with? 1. So if I'm dividing x by x, I'm still going to be left with 1. And you can even go through and do that multiplication again just to check your answer there. But you'll notice that that would simplify to the top line, ax minus x. So that's equal to c. And now I'd want to divide by a minus 1. And if it helps you, you can put those in parentheses too. You don't have to, but you can. So those would cancel. And I'm left with x equals c over a minus 1. Beautiful. Okay, so actually I think that we'll just work through one of these. We're just going to work through the one on the left, so I'm just going to, whoopsies, cross this guy out. You don't have to work on that one. I'm just going to focus on the one on the left. So it wants me to solve for x. So first off, I notice in this equation, I have two x's, so I need to factor. I need to factor out my x, so I'm left with r plus s over t equals 1. Well, I got to get rid of that t first since I'm dividing. So I'm going to multiply times t on both sides. So I'd be left with x times r plus s equals, what's 1 times t? T. So now, last step, I need to divide by r plus s. I'm going to write my answer off to the side here, since I don't have room over there. So I'm left with x equals t divided by r plus s. Nice. Okay. Go ahead and try these on your own. Take a pause. All right, hopefully that was enough time for you. For that first one, a equals bxt plus c. You're solving for x, and once you go through and solve that, you should get that a minus c over bt equals x. And for the one on the right, you should have gotten that x is equal to negative b over 3. So if you have questions on those, make sure you do shoot me an email about them. Last one, we have x plus 2 over y minus 1 equals 2. So I want to solve for x. In doing that, I first need to get rid of what I'm dividing by. So I'm dividing by this whole thing, right? Y minus 1, that whole expression. So to get rid of that, I need to multiply my entire fraction by y minus 1, and I need to do that on both sides. So those would cancel. I'm left with x plus 2 equals 2 times y minus 1. And then lastly, I can subtract 2 to get x by itself. So I'm left with x is equal to 2 times y minus 1 minus 2. And actually, I can simplify that even more, which you may have seen from the get-go. But if I distribute and then combine like terms, I would be left with x equals 2 times y is 2y. Then I would have 2 times negative 1, which is negative 2, minus 2 is negative 4. All right, so now you can go show your sub your notes. These are the homework problems that you need to have completed by Tuesday night. Remember, if you have any questions, please let me know, but have a great day and a great weekend, guys.